you went to school for physical therapy. Out of physical therapy, you're practicing with patients or taking care of patients, and then women start asking you, like, have you ever dealt with this? Or people just start confiding in you and asking you about issues. And then that informed you going back and getting like a special certification in pelvic floor and also biopsychosocial. I'm like really, really fascinated about the biopsychosocial element because that's the whole connection of like who we are, our lives, and that we're just not separate parts.
Exactly.
And like that's just the standout to me and the thing that I really want to lean into, because that's where this came from me, right? With my own journey. And I realize as I'm talking to other women and just moving through the world since I've been healing and dealing with things that, oh my God, it's all connected. And we don't live in a world that connects the dots.
Right.
And you have this really unique degree and specialty where you're connecting the dots. So I want to hear about the biopsychosocial element. And I think that women don't even know there are a lot of people who probably just don't even know what the pelvic floor is. So
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
maybe we just start off and say, Evelyn, what's the pelvic floor? Like, what's it responsible for?
So let me go back to one of your first questions is what is the pelvic floor and why aren't we talking about it? Though in the last year and a half, I'm seeing more, which is really,
absolutely.
really good. Yeah, it's really good. So what is the pelvic floor and what does it do and why is it important? The pelvic floor is a group of muscles, number one, that sits at the bottom of the bowl of the pelvis. So the pelvis is a bowl shape. It's surrounded by bones. You have your hip, you have your pelvic bones on each side. You have your sacrum in the back. You have your pubic bone, which is part of the pelvis, in the front. And on the bottom of the bowl are soft tissue muscles, ligaments, and some tendons. And these muscles are involved with a number of functions that we need to live a healthy life. First of all, we need to eliminate. So being able to pee with ease, being able to have a bowel elimination in under 5 minutes versus an hour, or repeated going back and forth because of issues. We also needed to close those hoses, close the doors, or muscles that surround the openings of the urethra opening, the vaginal opening, and the rectal opening. They're like little round muscles that will close the hose. So when you feel the urge to go to the bathroom, but you're out shopping in Bloomingdale's and there's no bathroom within a few minutes, the pelvic floor knows to contract so you're not leaking. So it prevents leaking. And another big aspect, one of the biggest aspects, is its sexual function. So when a woman is aroused, the pelvic floor softens and allows for increase of blood flow to the clitoris, which sits right at the base of the pelvic floor, right in the front. And when there is an orgasm, now those muscles do what's called fast twitch. They rhythmically contract to allow for orgasms. So women can have strong orgasms when they have healthy pelvic floor muscles. And the other aspects, two more aspects of the pelvic floor, is that it's a core stabilizer. So the core is made up of your pelvic floor, your deep muscles of the abdomen called transversus abdominis, the deep spinal muscles called multifidi.
So I hear those terms when I'm working out.
Yes.
Right? So your trainer's talking about that.
Yes.
So you're saying that the pelvic floor is responsible for sex, or what I'm hearing reversed is if you have painful sex or good sex, that's because of your pelvic floor. If you have incontinence issues, are feeling constipated or have constipation or diarrhea, or you have the chronic urge to pee,
Mm-hmm.
or lower back pain,
Mhm.
This is all coming from our pelvic floor.
It's coming from the pelvic floor, and we cannot disregard the nervous and immune system and brain. So, the what I want to bring to the attention is it's not just muscles in dysfunction that creates a problem, which is how we used to look at our patients initially before we understood the biopsychosocial healing approach, before we understood what drives central sensitization. I'll use words and I'll explain what they are as we go along. So so it's not just the pelvic floor, but one of the last things to bring out about the functions of the pelvic floor is that it is a representation or a mirror of our state of mind. So if we are in high anxiety or fear or worry, which unfortunately we as a society have been under in the last number of years, that's going to create tension, immediate tension, guarding of the pelvic floor group of muscles. So, and we can develop a pattern of where if we're not implementing quieting, soothing, going out for our exercise walk, doing some gentle stretches, doing a mindful meditation in the morning, if we're just go, 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 worry, worry, concern, bad thoughts on a regular basis, the brain is getting input from the nervous and immune system that something's not right. She's going to tell the brain, and the brain's going to say, I have to protect my girl. And I'm going to tell the pelvic floor, that's the first group of muscles that tighten up with worry and fear. I'm going to tell those pelvic floor muscles to tighten up, to physically guard. And
Okay, so this is a huge thing. I want to bring everyone that's listening. This was like something that we really need to grasp. What you're saying is that our mindset, how we move through the world on a daily basis, the thoughts that we have in our heads, the way that we speak to ourselves, the way that we may just hear ourselves constantly saying, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. Oh my God, I'm so anxious. We are racing to always get things done. It is not a slow, mindful world that we live in unless we make the choice to do that. But what you're saying is that for most of us who are just trying to live our lives, we notice that we're stressed out, but it's not just in our heads anymore. This is affecting core organs and groups in our bodies. And instead of, and this is the thing that I love about what you're doing, is that this really brings the dialogue to us being aware, mindful, and connecting the dots, right? Like I
Yeah.
joke, like the hip bone's connected to the thigh bone, and it really is. But when we are having self-limiting beliefs, toxic internal dialogue, stressed out, releasing cortisol, you're saying that the first muscle group that is affected by just living in a state of fear or fight or flight is our pelvic floor.
The pelvic floor.
And
Exactly.
so as women walking around and thinking, oh, I've got, I feel like I have to pee all the time, or I have painful sex with my partner, and we just think it's that. It's not.
It's not.
It's a symptom of what's going on up here and not balancing our lives. Or I should say can be, because there could be other medical things, but if that's ruled out,
Right.
right?
Right. Well, we are wired, our nervous system, our immune system and brain, they are basically here to protect us, keep us free from danger. So when we are in that, as you just said, we're in that fear thinking pattern. Um, a lot of us, we tend to think negative. It's like normal. But for why do some people, when they are in persistent pain or having these dysfunctions, they're even more sensitive, even to a non-threatening thought, or just like they had a work deadline that they missed, that might trigger pain for them. Why? Because nervous and immune system has learned to become upregulated. I have to make this point. It is not a person's fault. They didn't choose to become upregulated. It is the nervous and immune system's natural defense mechanism that's gotten a little faulty. And the way to reverse that is, what can I do to calm? What can I do to soothe? What are some of the small things that I can do to lower? I just missed my work deadline, or I had a fight with my husband. I know that stresses me out. I've learned if I go out for 15 minutes and just walk in nature, that's a big calming for my nervous and immune system. So it's almost like you will take ownership of your thought patterns. If you hear yourself thinking the typical upregulated way of fear, I'm never going to get better, I can never have sex with my partner again, all those scary thoughts, we recognize, that's really not very healthy. It's natural that my brain and nervous system wants to do that, but what can I do briefly that elevates the calm, elevates less of that fight flight nervous system? So I just want to make that point, that it is not somebody's fault that they created their chronic pain. There could be many, many reasons why a person has developed over time into an upregulated nervous system. And a lot can be due from what's called adverse childhood effects. So if a person has grown up in a household with a bipolar mother, or, somebody who's on substance abuse, alcoholism, these are all insults to the nervous system of a child. And that child, without realizing it and going into an adulthood, can manifest that same nervous system. But now we're recognizing that you don't need to continue with that same pattern. Oh, I was raised by a bipolar mother, hence, therefore, I will always have pain when I sit. That is not the case. There are strategies and techniques and medicines that can help you bridge and teach your nervous immune system and brain a new pattern that's healthier for you, that calms, and therefore less pain is sent by the brain as a form of protection.
So it's, when I think about this, right, it's like everything starts from, either big T trauma or little T trauma. And big T trauma is murder, rape, all the things that we think of. Just generally, we grew up thinking that's what trauma is. And I think so many of us just grew up thinking that that's the only kind of trauma. And if we're walking through the world and we have a roof over our head and food on our table and a normal family, right? Because we all think that we live in a normal family until we realize we don't, but we haven't had, there's no physical abuse. There's no violence. There's no drug use. There's no murder. Things like, again, the big T trauma, but just everything else other than that is little T trauma. So the little T traumas are like what you're saying. There's someone who's not well in the family, or someone has really big emotions, or someone comes home and drinks and you like, oh, I can tell by the way he's looking, it's going to be like everyone needs to walk on eggshells. Or you have a sibling that is a bully to you, or you get bullied on the playground.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like, that's all trauma. And we haven't really normalized or really had that conversation in society. And that's kind of the baseline. Those things create how we talk to ourselves, create how we move through the world. And like what you're saying, create a nervous system that is on hypervigilance. It sees everything as a threat because as a kid, we didn't feel safe.
Correct.
And we don't consciously walk through the world. We're not aware of that. We're not aware that that's what's happening inside. So we just move through the world and are super sensitive to things. And that starts feeding the fight or flight, that then arises, or, creates these chronic symptoms. And I think it's so, well, fascinating, and also just so screwed up, quite frankly. And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, because the dialogue needs to shift. We need to understand that the medical system's been so siloed. It's like, oh, if I feel like I have to go to the bathroom, then I'm going to a urologist.
Right.
I'm having back pain, I need to go to an orthopedist or a back specialist, or
Right.
I'm going on all these pain meds. I have painful sex with my partner. Well, I'm either not having sex, or we need to go into therapy together, or, do whatever. Maybe some people think that they shouldn't be with their partner.
Yeah.
There's all these different silos that we're going to. And I think that like the major thing and the takeaway here is that no, it's not all separate. It's actually coming from one place, the base of which is trauma as a kid, and then how we upregulate, and then it creates these symptoms. And the pelvic floor is unbelievable what it's responsible for.
Unbelievable. And just to know that whatever learned patterns a person has learned from whatever ages, childhood and on, that these patterns can be unlearned. That's really what we're recognizing um, by understanding what's called that biopsychosocial approach to healing, where it's not just a physical cause. Our medical society is mostly based on what's the tissue issue. Which organ? Is it your bladder? Is it endometriosis over their uterus? Is it the levator ani muscles? Is it the pudendal nerve? So they've been, and I too, when I first started my first 10 or so years, 12 years in pelvic physical therapy, which is what I focused on, I was also doing a biomedical approach. Let's stretch this particular muscle. Let's work on reducing, I used to call them trigger points in these muscles. And maybe 60% of patients did really well. But why were 40%, 30 to 40% not doing well? Why were they going to the 15th doctor, Botox injections, flying off to a different country for surgical techniques, doing interstim implants, yet they're still having symptoms? It just perplexed me. So I think our medical society, because I think in the last 2 or 3 years, there are more companies that are opening the doors about teaching pain neuroscience, implementing knowledge to patients as to what they can do. It's not about the patient coming to the acupuncturist or to the pelvic physical therapist or to their doctor and say, fix me. It's about those health practitioners can give the bridge or give a guidance and give some relief, but it's really up to the patient to learn gentle skills, light, nothing heavy duty. We're not going to sit on a rock in India and meditate for 8 hours. That's not going to happen. But we can do small things interspersed throughout the day that can calm. And especially if we recognize, I've been upregulated. I understand that's a driver for my brain to be overly protective of my pelvis, for example, or my migraines or my back pain. So what can I do to, while I get treated, see my medical professionals, what can I do? So I think, yeah, we are in a siloed medical community, though there are more lifestyle integrative medicine companies opening, and also other companies teaching pain neuroscience and coaching patients on how they can reduce that sympathetic fight-flight nervous system and elevate more that calm parasympathetic nervous system.
So for the women that are experiencing any of these symptoms, the chronic back pain, the leg tightness, the frequency
Right. Urgency.
sensations,
Hmm.
any
Yeah.
of that, you're saying that there's hope, that we
Well,
can
yes.
actually, there's there's things that we can do, and as like a first step. So maybe before thinking, oh my God, this is never going to get better, or I need to go see such and such doctor, maybe that's like we need to pay attention and go, well, maybe this is the aha moment. If we're just still enough, maybe we just need to feel something that's uncomfortable to get us out of our head and out of like
Mhm.
just the constant frenetic nature of our day. Say,
Mhm.
oh, I'm having discomfort here, and maybe start to tune in
Right. Or
to
ask,
ourselves.
yeah. Or ask like, what, what does the pelvis need? Or what does my back need? And just listen for a moment. Like, what can I do to soothe you? Or what do I need to know?
But if
And
so,
mm,
tell me, let's take that for example. If I've got, I mean, and I have like every one of these symptoms, right? So this is really fascinating. So, you know, I try and get massages, I try and stretch, I try and do nothing. I mean, it helps a little bit, but it's I'm clearly not doing the right thing. So what are the steps? Like, what are the things that we can do if we notice any of these symptoms? Do the treatments or the things that you would have us walk through, do they all look the same for each of those symptoms, or do they each have
mm.
different things to walk through?
That's a great question. And I wish I can say, oh yes, if everybody did this, this, and this, then everybody would be fine. But we're also individual. The drivers, the triggers are different for each other, and it feels overwhelming when we say, well, start to be mindful of the types of foods you're eating. Are you eating more whole grain, whole foods, or are you buying more of the pizzas and TV dinner, old fashioned junky foods? Are you hydrating enough? Are you feeding yourself good nutrition? Because a lot of people just downplay that, and well, I don't have time to cook, so I'm gonna just I'll just get the quick takeout. So food is medicine. So if that's overwhelming for people, I highly recommend seeing a nutritionist who knows about pelvic issues. And there are more and more that do, that can guide you on foods. And then now we're talking about another area of, let's learn about the neuroscience of pain. A lot of people don't understand that pain is a signal, urgency is a signal, distress is a signal, pain is a signal that comes from the brain to the tissues. It does not come from the tissues to go to the brain. So if we understand that,
Okay,
oh,
I think you need to repeat that. That is
that's a
that's
biggie.
huge.
Yeah, that's huge. So when you are at a club and
No,
you're
but let's
dancing,
say that again. The pain does not signal from our tissue to our brain. But so if you hurt your arm, it's not your arm telling your brain, "Oh my God, I'm in pain." It is your brain saying something just happened and putting out a pain response. So it's an opinion. Pain is an opinion.
correct. It thinks that for your arm situation, you have nerve receptors on your arm. They're called danger receptors, and it might be real danger. You may have had a cut. A knife may have cut you there while you I don't know what, or a crush thing. The danger signals go to the spinal cord. The spinal cord said, "Hey, we think it's a danger signal. Let's go tell the brain." Immune system and the spinal cord bring it up to the brain. The brain says, this is all in milliseconds. I mean, it's so fast. Is she under danger? Do I have to send her pain? Because the pain will be protective, and she'll then look to take care of that issue. She won't continue touching that sharp object. She won't be putting weight on the arm. We want her to protect it. So pain is one of the brain's first way to protect you. Is, for example, like if you twisted your ankle walking across the street, um, some people have seen where they completely tore the ligaments, but they're in the middle of the street. But the brain says, well, if I tell her to stop putting weight on her ankle line, even though it's
She's going to get
torn,
hit by a
it's
car.
going to hit by a car. What's more dangerous? Let's get her across the street. So only when they cross the street do they start feeling sudden intense pain, because she's now at a more intense danger and now on the side of the street. And now the brain says, hey, stay off that ankle. I'm going to send you pain, and I'm going to send you swelling, which is good. And I want you to keep your foot off the ground, and wrap it up. So these are all good signals. Healthy acute pain signals is good. Where it gets on a faulty end, where the brain is sending pain when, for example, I've treated women with vulvodynia, and I would ask permission, can I place my hand on the inside of your knee? And there's like a gasp, just a thought of somebody's hand, my hand or anybody's hand on the inside of the knee was a danger signal to them. And that's not a healthy reaction, but that's a learned pattern. So when you have a brain that is sending that signal of pain, when there's no perceived tissue damage, when there's no injury occurring, that's a faulty, highly upregulated nervous and immune system, an overprotective helicopter parent type brain hovering. What is it?
Or not even in that instance. I think it's not even pain, right? So if you put your hand on the inside of someone's leg, that is not necessarily painful to them, but it triggers some unsafe kind of or a stressor, an emotional stressor that
Right.
kind of, to your point, makes our nervous system hyper vigilant. It
Yes.
sends us into, wait, I'm not comfortable here. This is panicking me in some way, shape, or form. And
which
then,
is not healthy to live a life
right.
like that, right? So we like to, there's no direct injury to the woman's inner knee area, but we'd like to help lower the sensitization of the nervous system to allow touch to be placed there. When, for example, when there's vulvodynia for more than 4 or 5 months, and a lot of women I know have had it for too many.
Can you explain what that is? Because there might be people that just are not even familiar with that.
Sure.
term.
So the word vulvodynia, vulva means the vulvar anatomy of our pelvic floor. And dynia means pain. So basically pain in the vulvar vestibular region. So
is that what is referred to as painful sex, or
Yes.
is that a separate?
That is referred to as a diagnosis for painful sex. Either
Okay.
the word vulvodynia or dyspareunia is another name. We have different little vaginismus. There's a little bit of overflow with terminology, but it's related to pain with intimacy, with penetration, with either insertion of a menstrual cup or a dilator or a tampon or a penis or your fingers, anything where there's insertion into the region or touching the region that creates pain. Yeah. So with a person who has had vulvodynia for not more than 4 or 5 months, the muscles like the inner thigh muscles become on guard. The deep hip muscles become on guard. The brain is telling the area, the surrounding muscles of the pelvic region, hey, this is an area that has to be super protected, so I want you all to guard, to tighten up. And it signals the muscles to guard. So that's why I used to work on, quote, trigger points, which are like muscle tension points that didn't do anything because we weren't addressing the nervous system. Let's make it safe. How can we make it more calm? What can you do to instill more calm throughout your day, small bits throughout your day?
That's really unbelievable. And so when it was actually something that I had maybe heard from you in the past. Can you talk about what that looks like with the pelvic floor? So if we have had a history, right? We're all grown-ups now, and we've led this life that has brought us, and we have, again, chronic back pain or tightness in our legs or painful sex, whatever it is, that's because our pelvic floor is tight. Does it stay tight all the time? Does it relax? Or is it, I mean, is this something
Yeah.
like it's
It's
in
it,
a
you're
chronic
not.
state of tightness and we
Yes.
have to spend, okay.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so it's a habit. Remember, it's a faulty pattern. The brain thinks that you are constantly needing to be protected. So not only you feel symptoms of tension or dizzy or burning, or when you touch it, it's sharp pain, but the muscles are always on, are told to guard. So part of the work we need to do is to to teach the brain that things are safe here, and that's why we use I like that word use, but we have the body teach the brain that things are safe by doing gentle movement, by breathing and inhaling in your diaphragm, the large muscle underneath your ribs. As you take a deep inhale, that deep muscle underneath your ribs lowers, and the pelvic floor also slightly balloons outward. Gentle movement. We want to add to movements through breath, through gentle stretching, being mindful. I'd like to soften and open and heal and send warmth to this area to soften its underlying tension. I'm safe here. And sometimes you can say, thanks for sharing, but I'm really safe. I don't need to have this overly protection as I used to in the past. We don't need that anymore. So there are lots of steps. It's not just one way. Everybody has a slightly different pattern as to what works for them. My program, PelvicSense, offers a wide variety of different strategies. Some people will resound more with the breath work, with alternate nostril breathing, with with doing vagus nerve calming. There are lots of different varieties of things to do. It's not just one way. That's why I think self-care is individual, because it's important to look at the different components of self-care, which does include learning about pain science in a way that's understandable, which includes go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and also which also includes looking at the foods that I'm eating. Am I eating things, quality foods that support my good bacteria in my gut? Because I want my gut, which produces serotonin. I want more serotonin. So let me give myself more good bacteria to eat versus the junk type foods if I'm reaching for those, or eating so much sugar.
So that's actually really important for people who are always think, well, what's the big deal with food? Like, how is food medicine, or how can me eating a cheeseburger versus a piece of fish affect my back pain or affect any of this? Like, so what you're saying is that it's about like the nutrients that we're getting from that. And so that creates good or bad bacteria in our gut, which then creates an inflammatory response or not. And that affects our bodies and our tissues. So that's really why food is medicine and what you eat is important, because crappy food does not have nutrients in it. It has chemicals in it, not nutrients.
Exactly.
And chemicals, it's like pouring some poison into our gut. And that's really what the difference is. So people really do need to be mindful of their diet, trying to eat healthier and cleaner, really.
Yes.
And
100%.
then breath work, you're saying, just so you have techniques for breath work.
Yes.
You had
So when
said
you
like going for a walk or
right.
doing something to kind of calm ourselves down. You were talking about exercises too. I really want people to understand when they're in some sort of flare up, or if they're listening to this and they're going, oh my God, I have these symptoms. Like, what can I do immediately to start to feel better?
Well,
What are some of the things that someone can do that are accessible? that they don't have to spend money doing. Obviously, going for a walk is free, doing breath work is free.
Yes.
But like, what are some of the actual techniques? Are you able to share any of that so that people have like a real tangible thing that they can,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, walk away with and say, okay, like I at least have a starting ground?
Right. Well, I'm gonna highlight the walking, and the walking is in nature, not going into your basement and walking on your treadmill. It is about physically getting outside in nature, because when one is outside and walking for whatever you can, 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour, and daily walking is something that most people don't do, and or they'll do it in a gym. When you're outside in nature, that really helps your senses to become in tune. You can focus on the sounds of whatever sounds of birds you're hearing, the way the wind goes through the leaves, if you're near water, how it sounds as it reaches
That
the
sounds
coast.
so lovely. And I'm just thinking I live in the city, so I would be hearing sirens and horns and
Yes.
a very different experience than the birds in the ocean. Does
Yes.
that work? Can that calm you
Yes.
down even if it's a
Even if it's, I mean, there must be some trees nearby. There must be a bit of land, a bit of plot of land. Most cities have some parks that
yeah,
you just drive to that park, and whether it's like a half hour drive, I hope it's not. You just go to that park. I'm going to do my nature walk, because that's really the most effective. It just grounds you. It grounds the senses the way, because again, you're hearing other sounds, you're focusing on listening to sounds that are soothing, and you're getting a whiff of the air that the trees are offering with all the oxygenation that it has. You're using your senses, your sense of smell to smell the air near the grass, etc., nature. So I highlight walking because a lot of people say, "Oh, I can go walking," and then then forget about it. So I'm highlighting because that's really important, especially with the nature. And then anything else. I have a program, PelvicSense, that actually brings people through a calming movement. It's a mindful movement program. If you don't know where to start, I would start with some gentle, very minimal light yoga type class. I would go look into Qigong. It's Qigong, a class that would just gets it. These classes get you into a meditative state, and you're aware of doing movement, and you're watching or feeling the way you do movement. And then there's so many other very basic stretches, any gentle stretches lying on your back. Your knees are bent, your feet are on the floor. And then you're going to rock your knees to the right side and let it rest on a pillow. And notice the weight shift on your lower back as you rock your knees to the right side, how the weight shifts from the middle of your sacrum to the right side of the sacrum. And then bring your knees up center, slowly using your breath, and then rolling your knees to the left side, and notice how that feels. And just being mindful in the movement. If they're slow, this is not like high end, rah, rah, Jane Fonda, let's go. It's quieting, because that's what your nervous system needs. So, exercise, at least initially for most patients with pelvic distress or pain, is very easy. Inner thigh stretches, groin stretches, spinal, gentle upper body twisting, or thoracic rotation, and using breath with the thoracic rotation, again, to open up the ribs to allow the diaphragm to have more of an excursion. When you do deep breathing, you're elevating the parasympathetic nervous system. So while you're exercising, while you're doing a stretch, you're using deep breath. So not only are you getting some movement in tissues that may not be moving so much, like bringing your knees to your chest or bringing your right knee to your left shoulder, you're also doing quiet breathing, which elevates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is that calm, rest, digest. So I love combining breath work with gentle, mindful movements with anybody with pelvic issues to start, to allow the nervous system to say, you know what? The brain, this is not a dangerous thing. I don't have to tell the brain anything, except the brain gets a signal that we're moving and it likes it, and it will send signals of dopamine or other endorphins to you, to your body.
And if you are someone experiencing these, and so you've given us some takeaways of what to do to help alleviate those symptoms, what kind of commitment is that? Is that something that,
Yeah.
I mean, what's the time frame? Is that something that we need to do every day for the rest of our lives? Is that something we can do a couple days a week for
Right.
a fixed period of time? Like, how long do you
Yeah.
do that before you
How
can
long?
actually
Well,
see
you
or
know,
feel any difference?
yes. And this is the hard part because we are also wired when we do something that's new, that's supposedly good for us, we better see results the next day. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Or I might give it a week. I need to see results after that week one. But it's what you're doing is you're working on changing patterns. You're changing patterns of your spinal neurons, the cells within your spinal cord, patterns within your brain neurons, the cells in your brain, and the connections they are making, they have with each other. You're changing patterns. That does not take a week or 2 weeks or even a month. I've learned it takes about 3 or 4 months of 3 days a week is what I ask people to do. Just do something 20 minutes, 3 days a week, where you're doing some form of self-care, movement, mind, calming mind exercise,
Evelyn,
knowledge.
I so love that you said this. I so love that you said this. 3 days a week, 3 to 4 months is an appropriate time frame to start seeing a difference. I think that, you know, in what you said is everything that um, you know, I'm about, that healing power growth is about. It's about being mindful, and it's about not taking the easy way out. This is about whether it's not wanting to move through the world the same way anymore because you can't, because you're so disconnected from
You're so
yourself,
dumb.
that, we're all experiencing, my God, health issues like we've never seen before, allergies. I mean, it's just coming, from
Yeah.
every direction. And that the whole message here is, this is not about a quick fix. This is not about, dealing with the symptoms, right? Like, you're coming here because you want to lean in and figure out what's at the root of the discomfort. Like, that's where we're going to get into things, getting to the root cause, not just medicating or covering up a symptom. And we've spent our lives doing that. And I love that you have, just said that this is something that we need to make a conscious, mindful decision on how to shift our lives, how to take control back, how to be present, and how to make purposeful decisions that are in our best interest. And that we actually, if we do that, we can actually see a shift without medicating, without doing all of these things. Now, I'm not, saying that medication's not important. There are obviously,
Absolutely.
situations where that's necessary. But
Yes.
I think we're just so used to going straight to, what's the quick fix?
Yes.
I don't have time to deal with this. I don't want to sit in discomfort. I mean, I
Yeah.
certainly don't want back pain. I don't want all of these other things, but this is a signal that there's more going on. And
Yeah.
if you want to shift your life, we have these symptoms that are showing us that there's shifting that needs to take place.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. And to have your team of people that you or medical professionals that you find that are helpful for you. So if you want to see a massage therapist or acupuncturist or pelvic physical therapy, that's part of your team. Like they're on your side and you're also doing your part. You're not just waiting for them to do that quick manipulation or they release my trigger point or you'll put the needle in your acupuncture needle right there, and then all my symptoms will go away. They will help temporarily, but with you doing your work, you're going to open that medicine cabinet that we all have in our brains that has the most potent cannabinoids, opioids. And they're not addictive, but it takes effort
Wait, you're
to.
saying that we have those internally?
Our brain has a medicine cabinet of the most potent drugs, nowhere near the amount or the intensity of what we will put in ourselves. It's way stronger, way higher. So why not find ways to elevate our levels of serotonin, of dopamine ourselves? And there are lots of self-care techniques for all of those to be released from our brain. We want our brain to send that, and the brain has the ability. It's just got stuck in this faulty, you need protection, so I'm going to send you distress and pain because you got to go see somebody and yada yada yada. So yeah, so we'd like to elevate our own inner ability to send those healing hormones, endorphins, oxytocins, all that.
And how does someone, what are the things that someone should look for? How does someone go about finding a pelvic floor specialist?
Well, there's a lot more out there which is fantastic. So I would just Google pelvic physical therapy in the area that you live in. Not all pelvic physical therapists are biopsychosocially trained. So, depending on their work situation, if they're in a large, busy hospital, they may not have more than 25 minutes max with you. So you may have to do a little research yourself to find the right person for you. Certainly people can start doing PelvicSense, my home program, while they're seeking medical professionals. But I think it's important that, you are the CEO of your body. You are. Nobody's going to tell you that they know better. Of course, you want to hear their opinions. This is why you go to medical professionals. They have opinions. They have tests. You want to make sure that there's no high levels of cortisol, et cetera, XYZ, or a diagnosis. But you are the CEO of your body. So it's going to take some time, right? To find the right person, to find a nutritionist that you might want to work with to help you, because that can be overwhelming for people. What should I eat? I'm so used to eating these 4 things and I'm not sure how to do something else or if it's good for me. So there are a lot of people out there available online now, which is amazing. So nutritionists online, pelvic physical therapists, virtual as well. So that's there are lots of places now.
That's great. So there's hope.
Yeah.
Things can get better.
Mm-hmm.
There are resources. People can go to PelvicSense. They can Google online for exercises. Mindful of your eating, go for a walk in nature, try and eat mindfully, make a decision not to eat the fast foods and
right.
the
processed foods, right.
Right. This is really wonderful. And I really thank you for spending your time with us today. And I'm appreciative of it.
Awesome. Well, the fact that you were doing this good work and planning your amazing new business to help and reach more people, I'm so thrilled to be part of this process. So thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to share whatever I can with you and your people.